Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be with you today to explore something we all experience, but few of us have truly mastered. That is how to never feel angry or bothered by anyone. Now, I say never with caution because this isn't about suppressing human emotion. It's about understanding it, managing it, and rising above it, not through force, but through clarity. Let's begin by recognizing something simple yet profound. We are biological beings. Everything we think, feel, and perceive is filtered through an astonishingly complex system of neurons, chemicals, and circuits. Our emotional responses, like anger or irritation, are not character flaws. They're not weaknesses. They are deeply embedded biological processes that evolve to protect us. And the sooner we understand that, the sooner we can stop fighting ourselves and start working with our biology rather than against it. Now, when we talk about anger or being bothered by others, we're really talking about an ancient part of the brain called the amygdala. This almond-shaped structure buried deep within the temporal lobe is our emotional alarm system. It's lightning fast. It detects threats, real or perceived, and triggers a cascade of reactions. Our heart rate increases, our blood pressure rises, muscles tense, and stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline surge into our system. It's part of the fight or flight response, and it was once essential to our survival. In a time when threats came in the form of predators or physical danger, this reaction could save our lives. But in today's world, the threats have changed. They're psychological, social, emotional, a disapproving look from someone, a rude email, a snide remark, an unfair judgment. These things are not physically dangerous, but your amygdala doesn't make that distinction. It reacts as if you're under siege. Your biology hasn't caught up with your environment. That's why we often feel hijacked by emotions. We're using a primitive alarm system in a highly sophisticated world. However, here's the empowering part. While the amygdala is fast, it's not in control. The real conductor of the mind is the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational thinking, decision-making, empathy, and self-awareness. And we can strengthen that part of the brain through intention, practice, and awareness. In neuroscience, we call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on what we focus on and practice consistently. What does that mean for anger? It means you can train yourself to respond instead of react. It means you can move from reflexive emotion to thoughtful interpretation. It means you're not a victim of your biology, you're a steward of it. The shift begins with awareness. Imagine you're in a conversation and someone says something dismissive or offensive. You feel that rush of energy, that tightening in the chest, the clenching of your jaw. That's the amygdala lighting up. In that moment, if you pause, even just for a few seconds, you give your prefrontal cortex a chance to step in and ask a question. What's really happening here? Is this worth my peace? What's the cost of letting this live in me? Now, this is not about suppressing emotion. Suppression is actually harmful. Unexpressed anger doesn't disappear. It gets stored in the body and can manifest in unhealthy ways. Chronic stress, inflammation, even physical illness. As a physician, I can tell you that unregulated emotions have very real effects on your biology. Elevated cortisol over time can suppress immune function, raise blood pressure, disrupt sleep, and contribute to metabolic disease. So the goal is not to stuff anger down. It's to understand it and then choose what you do with it. One of the most effective techniques I often recommend to people is breath awareness. It sounds simple, but it's deeply powerful. When you feel irritation rising, simply taking a slow, deep breath, inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 6, sends a signal to the nervous system that you are safe. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, also known as the rest and digest state. In doing so, you override the fight or flight response. You lower your heart rate, you reduce cortisol, you create a moment of space. And in that space, choice is born. That's where the magic happens. Because the real question isn't how do I stop people from bothering me? It's how do I stay rooted when they do? You can't control the world or what others say or do, but you can regulate your internal environment, the way you might cultivate a healthy gut microbiome or strengthen your immune system. You build emotional resilience just like you build physical strength through consistent small choices that accumulate into lasting change. Think of it like this. When someone provokes you, you're offered a kind of mental toxin. You can either ingest it, hold on to the insult, ruminate on it, replay it in your mind, or you can choose to let it pass through. Just like your liver filters out toxins in the body, your awareness can filter out toxic emotional energy, but you have to train it to do so. And that's where mindfulness comes in. Daily mindfulness, whether it's meditation, journaling, mindful walking, or simply checking in with your emotions, builds that muscle. You become more aware of your internal cues, more conscious of your triggers, and more capable of responding with clarity instead of reflex. Studies have shown that even 10 minutes of mindfulness practice a day can reduce the size and reactivity of the amygdala over time. That's not philosophy, that's brain imaging. The truth is, no one teaches us how to manage emotion growing up. We learn math, we learn history, we learn how to follow rules, but very few of us are taught how to identify, regulate, and process our own emotional states. But it's never too late to start. That when someone bothers you, instead of asking, why are they doing this to me? Try asking, what's happening inside me and how can I return to balance? When you shift the focus inward, you reclaim your power. You realize that emotional mastery isn't about control, it's about cooperation. You cooperate with your biology. You listen to the signal, but you don't become the signal. And over time, what you'll find is that the same situations that used to trigger you now pass through you like wind through leaves. The energy comes, the energy goes, but you remain rooted, centered, unshaken. That's not just emotional intelligence, that's health, that's resilience. That's the result of understanding who you are, not just emotionally, but biologically. And that's the first step toward never feeling angry or bothered by anyone, not by shutting down your humanity, but by elevating it, by partnering with your mind and body in a way that is kind, wise, and profoundly healing. Let me take you on a journey, not through abstract ideas, but through what the science in the soul can teach us. When someone offends us, belittles us, or makes us feel dismissed, it's natural to react with defensiveness or anger. That reaction is instinctive, emotional, and very human. But I want to gently offer you a different approach, one that not only protects your inner peace, but also supports your long-term health. It's not always easy, but it's deeply rewarding. And it begins with a question that's both simple and transformative. What might this person be going through? It might seem counterintuitive at first. Why would we concern ourselves with the inner life of someone who just upset us? Why would we try to understand someone who seems rude, impatient, or unfair? The answer is this: because doing so allows you to step out of reactivity and into resilience. It's an invitation to empathy, not for their sake, but for yours. There is compelling science behind this. Studies in neuroscience have shown that when we engage the part of our brain responsible for perspective taking, specifically regions like the medial prefrontal cortex, we begin to quiet the circuits associated with anger and emotional reactivity. In other words, when you make an effort to imagine what another person is experiencing, your own emotional turbulence begins to settle. This is not abstract. It's chemical, electrical, biological. Now, we're not talking about excusing toxic behavior or denying injustice. Empathy isn't agreement, it's understanding. And what we often find when we look closely is that Many people who hurt others are themselves carrying wounds they've never learned to express or heal. And without realizing it, they project that pain outward. Their hostility becomes their language for unresolved suffering. You've likely heard the phrase hurt people, hurt people. It's more than a saying, it's a reflection of what happens when stress and trauma go unprocessed. Research shows that individuals who experience early life adversity, such as neglect or abuse, often carry heightened levels of cortisol and inflammatory markers well into adulthood. Their nervous systems remain on alert. Their tolerance for discomfort becomes narrow. Their reactions become sharp because they have little emotional reserve. In a way, they're walking through life like a body with no skin. Everything feels like an injury. When we remember this, it softens the story we tell ourselves. Instead of they're attacking me, it becomes they must be suffering. That single shift changes everything. It disarms your defensiveness and restores your balance. And that balance is not just mental, it's physiological. Let me explain. When someone angers you and you stay in that emotion, your body pays the price. Your sympathetic nervous system, the system that handles your fight or flight response, becomes activated. Cortisol floods your bloodstream. Your immune cells shift into an inflammatory state. Your digestion slows. Your heart rate increases. Over time, chronic activation of the stress response contributes to a host of diseases, cardiovascular problems, poor sleep, lowered immunity, even cognitive decline. On the other hand, when you practice empathy, when you pause and reflect instead of reacting, you trigger an entirely different biological pathway. Oxytocin, the hormone associated with bonding and trust, increases heart rate variability, a marker of emotional flexibility and health, improves your vagus nerve, which governs the parasympathetic nervous system, signals the body to relax, to restore, to heal. In this way, compassion is not just a moral virtue. It's a medical intervention, a protective mechanism, a daily dose of peace in the form of biology. Now, this doesn't mean you have to welcome mistreatment. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have boundaries. In fact, healthy boundaries are part of emotional health. But boundaries are different from barriers. The barriers say, I must shield myself from everyone. Boundaries say, I will care for myself while still seeing others with clarity. The most powerful boundary of all is internal, the ability to protect your peace while still acknowledging another person's pain. Let me offer you a real world example. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone interrupts you abruptly. You feel disrespected, you feel small, the amygdala flares up, and your first instinct might be to respond sharply or shut down entirely. But if you take a breath, if you create even 3 seconds of space, you can activate the prefrontal cortex and ask, why might they be acting this way? Maybe they're under pressure from their boss. Maybe they're feeling insecure about their own role. Maybe they just got bad news that morning. You don't have to know the details, but imagining a reason, any reason, immediately shifts the emotional energy. It brings you out of fight or flight and into presence. And from that place, you can respond instead of react. Maybe you stay quiet. Maybe you address it calmly later. But the point is, you've chosen peace, not because they deserved it, but because you did. What you'll find over time is that this practice builds emotional strength. Just as muscles grow through repetition, so does your ability to stay grounded. Every time you choose empathy over anger, you reinforce those neural pathways. You become someone who sees with greater depth, who lives with more ease. And ironically, this kind of inner peace often has a ripple effect. When people feel seen, even unconsciously, they begin to soften too. Not always, but often enough to matter. There is also a deeper truth here, one that speaks to our shared humanity. We are all, every one of us, navigating life with invisible burdens, loss, fear, loneliness, regret. The person who cuts you off in traffic may be rushing to the hospital. The colleague who snaps at you may be grieving silently. The stranger who glares at you may be at war with themselves. When you live with this awareness, not as a theory, but as a lens, it becomes harder to hate and easier to breathe. And that is the ultimate goal, not to eliminate emotion, but to elevate awareness, to choose curiosity over judgment, to realize that most of the time what bothers us is not a reflection of truth, but of pain, ours or theirs. Empathy, in this sense, is not weakness, it's mastery. The mastery of our own emotional health, the mastery of our biological systems, the mastery of how we move through a world that is often chaotic and loud. And through that mastery, we create something precious, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us. Because when one person chooses peace, it makes it easier for others to find their own. And in that shared space, something remarkable begins to happen, not just emotionally, but biologically, socially, and spiritually. That is the path. One breath, one moment, one choice at a time. There is a question I often ask patients and people I speak with when they describe a recurring state of anger or emotional disturbance. It's this: what energy are you allowing into your life every day? Because the truth is, most of us are not consciously choosing the emotional environment we live in. We wake up, check our phones, scroll through messages, interact with dozens of people, absorb conversations, glances, criticisms, expectations, and we rarely stop to ask, is any of this serving my well-being? Just as we are now becoming more aware of what we put into our bodies, organic foods, fewer processed ingredients, healthy fats, we must also become just as intentional about what we allow into our minds and hearts. Emotional inputs, like dietary ones, affect our health. And over time, the accumulation of stress, conflict, noise, and negativity becomes a form of internal pollution. The science here is very clear. Chronic exposure to psychological stress activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal HPA axis, leading to elevated cortisol and systemic inflammation. This in turn impairs immune function, accelerates cellular aging, disrupts sleep, and increases the risk for cardiovascular disease. In short, emotional toxicity is not invisible to the body. It leaves fingerprints on your biology, on your gene expression, even on the rate at which your brain cells regenerate. So when we talk about not feeling angry or bothered by others, we must acknowledge that this is not simply a matter of willpower. It's a matter of discipline and daily practice. Just as you wouldn't eat a healthy meal once and expect a lifetime of health, you can't expect to feel calm and unbothered without nurturing your emotional ecosystem on a regular basis. That's why I often say peace is a daily health practice. Let's make this very practical. Imagine you've just had a tense exchange with someone. Maybe it was over something small, a disagreement, a judgment, an interruption, but you can feel your energy drop. You feel tight, maybe restless. That moment may seem insignificant, but your nervous system is already responding. Your body is mobilizing energy as if it's defending itself from harm. Now, here's the key. You have a choice. You can carry that energy with you for hours, maybe even days, replaying the moment, attaching your identity to the feeling. Or you can pause, notice the sensation, and ask yourself, is this worth staying with? What would happen if I let it go? Letting go doesn't mean ignoring it. It means metabolizing it, moving it through your system instead of letting it stagnate. And we can support that process through practices that engage the parasympathetic nervous system, what I call the body's built-in peacekeeper. Breath work, for instance, isn't just a relaxation technique. It's a physiological tool. Deep diaphragmatic breathing has been shown to reduce blood pressure, lower cortisol, and increase vagal tone. This has a cascading effect on mood and mental clarity. You're not just calming yourself, you're shifting your entire internal chemistry. The same goes for movement. Gentle forms of exercise like walking, stretching, yoga help regulate stress hormones and increase endorphins. But more than that, they create a rhythm in the body that helps discharge pent up emotional energy. When you move your body with intention, you also move your emotions. Another essential practice is limiting exposure to people and environments that consistently deplete your energy. This is not about judgment or avoidance, it's about conservation. Your energy is a finite resource, just like your time. If there are people in your life who constantly bring chaos, criticism, or confusion, you owe it to your health to create space. That might mean setting a boundary, limiting interaction, or simply choosing not to engage with certain topics. Protecting your peace is not selfish, that it is self-preservation, because every time you preserve your internal equilibrium, you give your body the gift of recovery. And in that state of recovery, your immune system functions more efficiently, your heart rate variability improves, and your brain operates with greater clarity. There's also something to be said for the role of gratitude and energy hygiene. The simple act of identifying even one thing you're grateful for each day can shift your neurochemistry. Gratitude activates brain regions associated with dopamine and serotonin, two neurotransmitters deeply involved in mood regulation. And what's remarkable is that you don't even need to express the gratitude outwardly. Just bringing it to mind can produce measurable changes in the brain. So in the face of daily frustrations, someone cuts you off in traffic, colleague speaks over you, a friend forgets to respond. Ask yourself not just why did they do this, but what state of energy do I want to live in right now? Because once you become intentional about the energy you choose to keep, the world no longer holds the same power to throw you off balance. This is where emotional maturity begins, not in perfection, but in presence. When you understand that every interaction is an invitation, not a command, you begin to regain control, an invitation to be reactive or to be reflective, to be defensive or to be discerning, to match chaos with chaos or to offer stillness instead. And this is not about becoming passive or disengaged. Quite the opposite. When you no longer allow others to dictate your state of being, you gain a quiet form of strength, one rooted not in dominance, but in self-regulation. And that strength radiates. Others feel it. You become a calming presence, a grounding energy. In a world where many are quick to react and slow to reflect, your ability to remain steady becomes an act of leadership. The reality is we all live in a shared emotional environment. And just as one person's negativity can ripple outward, so can your peace. Every time you choose to remain grounded, to let go of something petty, to see past someone's projection, you contribute to a different kind of atmosphere, one that supports healing, not harm. And over time, what you'll find is that you're no longer reacting to every trigger, not because the world changed, but because you did. You've built a new baseline. You've cultivated emotional resilience, not as a strategy, but as a way of being. So the next time someone challenges your peace, pause. Ask yourself what you're truly feeding. Ask whether this moment, this energy, this tension is worth the cost to your nervous system, your clarity, your day, because most of the time it isn't, and your body knows it. When you begin to live from that awareness, choosing stillness over reactivity, reflection over impulse, you don't just feel better, you are better. Biologically, emotionally, spiritually, and no one, not even the most difficult person, can take that away from you.